Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying the Global Azure Virtual Conference and a warm welcome to this session all about the Azure Stack portfolio. In this session, we'll take a look at how you can extend the power of Azure to where Azure cannot go, to where you, your teams, your business need it, whether that be in your data center or at the edge. My name's Lisa Clark and I'm based in Dundee, Scotland. I'm passionate about enabling customers to harness the power of hybrid cloud and the intelligent edge. I love the tech community and I've recently kicked off a podcast as an excuse to talk to and engage with the super talented Microsoft community all over the world. The podcast is called Lisa at the Edge and you can find it on Spotify and many other platforms. I work at Dell Technologies as part of the Azure Stack product group as an engineering technologist with a business development focus. I'm responsible for working with our partner Microsoft, our specialty sales teams, and our customers in driving the business across EMEA and enabling customers to unlock the power of Azure. Okay, let's get stuck into the session. We all know and love Microsoft Azure. Azure currently has 58 regions across the globe. That's more than its rivals AWS and Google Cloud combined. Yet if we look at the map, there's still so much of this awesome world which may, for latency or bandwidth requirements or constraints, not be able to take advantage of Azure services. Microsoft recognise this, and they recognise that it is indeed a hybrid world. And we, along with our data, live at the edge. This is where the Azure Stack family of products come in. The Azure Stack family extends Azure to where you need to consume your Azure services, whether that be in your data center, the edge, or with Dell Technologies, the tactical edge. Okay, let's take a look at the Azure Stack portfolio. The Azure Stack portfolio now has 3 products. Azure Stack Hub, previously known as Azure Stack, is the OG of the products, and we'll focus on Hub the majority of this session. Azure Stack Hub brings Azure services to your data center. It brings infrastructure as a service and platform as a service services to scenarios which may traditionally prevent you from moving those workloads to the public cloud. And we'll look at this in a bit more detail later on. Azure Stack HCI is a new product to the family, previously known as the WSSD program. With Azure Stack HCI, Microsoft not only recognizes that it is a hybrid world, but that not all workloads may be able to or need to transition to an IaaS or PaaS model. But they may need the power and locality of on-premises HCI solutions. That doesn't mean that they shouldn't be able to benefit from the value of the Azure cloud model, and Azure Stack HCI can connect to Azure to take advantage of services such as Azure Backup and Azure Site Recovery, but more on that later. Azure Stack Edge is for those scenarios where you need IoT processing or machine learning at the edge in a smaller form factor. This is a cloud managed appliance that needs to be managed by the Azure portal. You get this direct from Microsoft and you pay for it on a per use basis, just like the cloud. Okay, so let's take a look at what this means for the customer in practice. So the way I like to think about this is focusing on where the customer is focusing. So when the customer is using Azure, public Azure, their focus is on using those cloud native services. Their focus is on the Azure portal, the APIs, the IaaS and PaaS services, and the cloud platform tools that they're using to engage with that platform. They don't care about the underlying compute, storage, networking, or the hardware. They don't need to concern themselves with that because Microsoft is taking care of that. With Azure Stack Hub, this is basically a mini Azure in your data center. So as you can expect, your focus is primarily on that Azure portal, the APIs, the IaaS and PaaS services, and the cloud platform tools that you're using to engage with that platform. The Azure Stack Hub comes as an appliance. This appliance is co-engineered by Microsoft and one of their chosen OEM partners. Obviously, Dell Technologies is the best, but other OEMs are available. Your focus here is, like I said, on the Azure portal and the services. But in Azure Stack Hub, there is another view, and that is the admin view. Now, this isn't available, and you can't see this in the portal with public Azure because Microsoft are taking care of running that platform. When it comes to Azure Stack Hub, you do need to have someone taking care of the cloud operator role. So that cloud operator will need to look after and maintain things like capacity. They'll need to create offers and plans, just like you see when you log into Azure. They will need to install any of the additional services on the hub that you want to run, like Azure Web Apps, for instance. So you do have a split view of an admin view as well as your normal Azure portal view. And that's really something to keep in mind. In terms of the underlying hardware, though, you're still not interested. That comes as an appliance and it is updated as an appliance from your OEM, who will apply hardware updates, and from Microsoft, who apply updates on a monthly basis to Azure Stack Hub to continue to improve Hub and bring new services to it. And then you've got Azure Stack HCI. With Azure Stack HCI, your focus will be on managing and running your virtualized applications and virtual machines on the HCI infrastructure using Windows Admin Center. You'll also be responsible and be focused on managing that hyperconverged infrastructure and the hardware. You'll use Windows Admin Center and not the Azure portal, but there is integrated access in Windows Admin Center to allow you to connect Azure Stack HCI to Azure and take advantage of things like Azure Backup, Azure Site Recovery, and Azure Monitor. So what does this mean? This means that you will have consistency across Azure, Azure Stack Hub, and Azure Stack HCI, allowing you to apply the same policies and governance to your workloads wherever they might reside, making things a lot more efficient and a lot easier for your teams to focus on delivering value. A great way to think about the differences between Azure Stack Hub and Azure Stack HCI when you're thinking about which is right for me, what platform should I run my workloads on, Azure Stack Hub brings consistent Azure services on-prem. Azure Stack HCI allows you to connect on-prem resources to the public cloud to take advantage of Azure services. Okay, let's take a closer look at Azure Stack Hub first of all. So with Azure Stack Hub, let's start by taking a look at the use cases. There are 4 categories that most use cases fit into: edge solutions, disconnected solutions, regulatory constrained solutions, and Azure application model on-prem. Let's start by taking a look at edge. Edge solutions, or the edge use case, is, you guessed it, where there is a need for data processing at the edge. So it could be an IoT use case, it could be an edge analytics use case, it could be where you want to take advantage of cloud services to modernize your applications, but your applications have to reside next to your data, for instance. So you might have bandwidth, data processing, and latency constraints, and therefore you cannot rely on that connection to public Azure. We see this a lot in the oil and gas and the hospitals space, as well as factories and any kind of organization that has a heavy need for and use of data processing on premise. Next up, let's look at disconnected. So this is where there is a requirement for the Azure Stack Hub to be disconnected from Azure. So it cannot be connected to public Azure. This could be because it's prohibited from a regulatory perspective, or from a military perspective, or it could be that there is just no internet access. So for the typical example is on a cruise ship, or maybe on an oil rig, for example. And this is a really amazing thing about Azure Stack Hub. The fact that it can operate in a disconnected mode is insane. The fact that you can have public cloud, these Azure cloud native services on premises in a disconnected state is pretty impressive. Okay, regulatory constrained solutions. So an example that I have here is a UK printing customer. So this is a customer who has a desire to use cloud native services. They are PCI compliant, and it's absolutely necessary that they maintain that compliance. Their regulatory body doesn't allow them to run their workloads in public Azure. So Azure, as you may know, has tons of these compliance certifications. But even though Azure has these certifications, I think we're stuck in a little bit in a place in time where regulatory bodies need to catch up with modern technology. Until they catch up, those kind of customers would be prohibited from modernizing their workloads and taking advantage of these services. But with Azure Stack Hub, it means that they can continue on with that modernization of their services whilst also meeting regulatory constraints. And then finally is the Azure application model on-prem. This, to be honest, is a little bit of a catch-all category. It's basically where you want to, for whatever reason, use Azure services on premises. And that could be for application modernization. An example here is a newspaper. They have both traditional and digital media. They have terabytes of data that they have to send to printing presses. They cannot lose connectivity. They could not depend on a connection to public Azure for this. They also want to modernize their applications and provide their reporters and their staff with modern tools, and they also want to have a global reach. Well, by having a hybrid solution across both Azure Stack Hub and Azure, they can meet their goals. So that's our 4 Azure Stack Hub use cases. Edge solutions, disconnected solutions, for regulatory constrained solutions, and where you just want to use the Azure services to modernize your applications on-prem. Okay, let's take a look at what services are actually available on Azure Stack Hub. Before we go on to look at what services are available within Azure Stack Hub, it's important to mention that all of the services which are available in Azure, which are hundreds, they won't all come to Azure Stack Hub. As I mentioned previously, Azure Stack Hub is like a mini Azure in your data center. And the engineering that's gone into being able to do that and bring those Azure services on a much, much smaller form factor is pretty impressive. The services which will be brought to Hub are those which best fit the use cases that we just went over. So the services that will provide most value to edge disconnected solutions. And that's important to understand. Okay, so from an IaaS perspective, we have the following set of core functionality. We've got Azure Virtual Machines, and these represent a subset of the virtual machine SKUs that are available within public Azure. and they deliver Azure consistent features. So you can start to look at infrastructure as a code deployment and simple scale in, out, up, and down functionality. You've got blob, table, and queue storage. The cloud storage isn't delivered via a SAN or other block delivery mechanisms, but is instead delivered as code consumable and manageable object, table, and queue storage, enabling new and exciting application and developer functionality, which is not traditionally found in on-premise infrastructure. You've got Azure networking. So you've got Azure software-defined networking functionality and is delivered out of the box from Azure Stack Hub. This enables extremely simple but powerful control over VPNs and network microsegmentation. We've got VM scale sets. In a VM scale set, a standardized image, for example, maybe a VDI client or a web front-end server, can be deployed and then scaled up to as many as 100 instances with a click of a button. Monitoring and automation enables automatic scalability of workloads based on actual demand, which, coupled with Azure Stack's pay-as-you-go pricing model, can deliver significant cost and resource utilization efficiencies. Public cloud in your data center. Finally, we've got the Azure Marketplace, and this is the app store of the cloud, where hundreds of pre-built images created by software vendors as golden images of their software are available to syndicate in your hub. So whether you need the latest Ubuntu image from Canonical, a load balancer appliance from Kemp, or a fully configured, highly available Cassandra cluster, the Azure Marketplace delivers the power of these pre-validated images locally on your premises to your teams. And I think this is so powerful. You control that as the cloud operator, so it allows you to implement a level of governance and control over which types of virtual machines, etc., applications that your teams are deploying, but also being able to give them the choice and provide them with the tools that they need. In terms of platform as a service, you've got Azure App Service, Azure Functions, IoT Hub, and Event Hubs. You've got SQL and MySQL resource providers, and you've also got Kubernetes with AKS Engine. So this is really great. In terms of, so all the PaaS services that we're looking at here are true PaaS services. Quick note about SQL and MySQL resource providers. That is the ability to provide the people using your Azure Stack Hub with SQL and MySQL DBs as if they were consuming them for Azure. Again, going back to that cloud operator role, there is a role for those to be managed behind the scenes. So that's still required there. So what does this do? This gives your developers and your IT pros one hybrid cloud platform. They're both operating and using the same platform, and they can both use it to their benefit. You've got the same set of tools, the same set of skills required across both. This means they can take advantage of both Azure IaaS on-prem and Azure PaaS on-prem and manage with a consistent experience. The Azure Stack Hub Marketplace is really a great balance between you being able to empower your teams by giving them the choice to be able to work with the tools that they know and love, but also being able to exercise some kind of control and governance because you curate and you manage that marketplace. It's really, really powerful. Okay, with that said, let's move on to Azure Stack HCI. Okay, so let's take a look at the use cases for Azure Stack HCI. So Azure Stack HCI is where you want to consolidate your virtualized applications on hyperconverged infrastructure. But not any hyperconverged infrastructure. This infrastructure can extend to Azure. So you can connect to Azure within Windows Admin Center and take advantage of things like Azure Backup, Azure Site Recovery, and Azure Monitoring. You can consolidate your data center servers and storage for those workloads and the data that you will not be moving to the public cloud or that's not the best fit for Azure Stack Hub. You can deploy and manage high performance and scalable SQL servers with Azure Stack HCI. Then you could connect them to Azure Stack Hub and provide your users with resource providers to access those SQL databases, just like they're accessing PaaS services. With Azure Stack HCI, you have hyper-converged infrastructure in your data center, which has the ability to connect to Azure and take advantage of Azure services. This means that you'll have a consistent view, a consistent governance and monitoring view across all of your platforms, whether they be hyper-converged virtualized platforms, Azure Stack Hub, or Azure. Obviously, there are some similarities between Azure Stack HCI and Azure Stack Hub. They use the same software-defined compute, storage, and network infrastructure, and they go through the same rigorous hardware testing criteria and validation program. But Azure Stack Hub is a tightly controlled appliance, whereas with Azure Stack HCI, you have a lot more flexibility in terms of the infrastructure configurations that you can choose. With Azure Stack HCI, you will use Windows Admin Center to manage your hyper-converged infrastructure. And you'll be responsible for managing that infrastructure and updating it, as well as all the virtual machines, etc. on top. Okay, let's move on to the final product in the Azure Stack portfolio, which is Azure Stack Edge. Let's take a look at the use cases. And you guessed it, it's machine learning at the edge, or where there is a need for edge compute to do data processing, perhaps in either machine learning or IoT situations. And also Azure Stack Edge can be used to do network data transfer from the edge directly to Azure. Azure Stack Edge is a managed appliance. It must be managed by the Azure portal, whether that be the Azure portal or the Azure Stack Hub portal. It cannot be disconnected. And you can run virtual machines, containers, and Azure IoT services on Azure Edge where you need it. Okay, so as I said at the beginning, Microsoft Azure, 58 regions in total, more than Google and AWS combined. But there is still a need to bring those Azure services and that compute and data processing power closer to where we need to use it. And that could perhaps be in service providers, or it could be in your own data center. But with the Azure Stack portfolio, you've got one Azure ecosystem, you've got one set of tools, one set of skills, one consistent view across all of your platforms, no matter where they are, enabling you to use the services that you need and that you want, where you need and where you want them. Thank you so much for joining my session. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you'd like to talk more about the Azure Stack family, give me a tweet at Lisa at the Edge, and I look forward to hearing from you.